Retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis is a senior fellow and military expert at Defense Priorities, a non-profit think tank in Washington, D.C. He's also the author of The 11th Hour in 2020 America. Colonel, good to see you. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, there hasn't been this much talk about a possible war between mainland China and Taiwan in 40 years. There are myriad reasons why, but in your assessment, is there one factor in particular which best explains why now?
Well, I think it's really a confluence of events that is coming together in sort of a nexus moment right now. You have basically the end of like 20 years of military development and advancement by the Chinese. You have worsening trade relations with the United States and China. And lots of other, pushback on that. And then you also have on the island of Taiwan a distancing from the idea that they even want to reunify with the mainland China, which used to be kind of a given on both sides. All those things coming together now, you see a much more confident Xi Jinping because he knows his military now is much better than it was, and it's actually within the realm of possibility for them to take the island.
Well, the Biden administration policy is essentially a continuation of de-escalation of tension in the Taiwan Strait. Listen to President Joe Biden. Here he is.
I've spoken with Xi about Taiwan. We agree we'll abide by the Taiwan agreement. That's where we are. And we made it clear that I don't think he should be doing anything other than abiding by the agreement.
He's really downplaying everything, but over at the Wall Street Journal, on their opinion pages, the headline read, "Make it clear the US will defend Taiwan." That's urgently needed. The writer goes on to argue to restore American credibility after the pullout from Afghanistan, a whole bunch of other reasons. But rarely does any good come from red lines or declaring absolutes.
No, 100% no. I mean, that's why the ambiguity of the strategic ambiguity over the years has served everybody well, because there haven't been any hard red lines. And, movements like this from the Wall Street Journal are the absolute worst thing we could possibly do, was to declare that we would defend Taiwan, with whom we have no defense treaty, and tying us into a potential war with China, because the Taiwan issue is something of great emotional importance to the Chinese, and it's at best a peripheral interest of the United States. And so for that reason, not to mention the 100 miles off their shore versus 6,000 miles off our shore, that would be a recipe for disaster to try to engage with that.
Well, Taiwan believes that in 3 years' time, China's military will be capable of launching a full invasion. But here's the thing. This is not easy. Maintaining an invasion force across the 100 miles of water you talked about, the Taiwan Strait, landing on a coastline with topography which is a defender's dream. Taiwan could mobilize up to 400,000, maybe more troops. And there's this 3-to-1 ratio for invaders versus defenders, which would mean, rough calculation, China would have to send 1.2 million PLA troops into Taiwan. So, this is a huge gamble. Why would Xi Jinping take this risk? The whole risk-reward equation seems out of whack.
Well, I'm actually not as confident that China can't do it. And I'm not as confident in Taiwan's ability to defend themselves. They should have plenty of natural capabilities and having built up over years. But a bunch of reports in recent years, and some even recently this year, have shown that the Taiwanese have not taken their defense seriously enough. Their readiness is actually quite low. On the other side of the equation, though, the Chinese is very high. And when you look, especially that their cyber capability, their missile capability, and then their sea and air force capability, it's possible, if they do it in a way that I've actually described in just a couple of months ago, how China could actually do it and launch such an attack and win, because it's not as bad for them as it may appear.
Yeah, I guess that equation, what we're looking at just then, that doesn't even take into account the US. I mean, US involvement here. I know that there's only an obligation to plan to defend rather than coming to defend. But if the US got involved, then I know the war games have played out which show the US losing this confrontation to China. But isn't that the point of the war games? Aren't they meant to stress weaknesses within the US defense system?
Well, only if you then set about to correct any of those deficiencies that are formed. But here's the real issue. Here's where the rub comes into it. In order to defend Taiwan, and especially if it was going to be an imminent attack from China, we would have to forward deploy troops in substantially larger numbers than we have now. We would have to stockpile weapons, to personnel and everything else for many months in the areas close to it. We would have to go on a war footing, as we did, for example, before Desert Storm or the 2003 invasion of Iraq. You need a long buildup time. If war comes without warning, and we're just on the footing that we're on right now, we simply don't have the capacity to engage in a war more than just like a couple of weeks with China, and then it would probably be too late by then.
Which is why it's best to keep diplomacy, keep talking, keep de-escalating.
Absolutely. I'm 100% supportive of that.
Colonel, good to see you. Thank you, sir.
Always my pleasure. Thank you.